Welcome to another episode of Wisdom and Hustle. On tonight, I'm talking to Myrna Laine Hyppolite. She's the founder of Empower Financial Wellness that helps women improve their financial prowess by understanding the stock market, the importance of budgeting, and to create a solid plan towards retirement. We all want that. Over the years, she's witnessed friends and family after working for 20 years, particularly women, to end with no savings. So consequently, she launched her business in 2020, focusing on helping to mitigate the fears by equipping her clients with the appropriate tools to manage their money independently. Welcome, Myrna.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. I think money is one of those topics that oftentimes we are afraid to talk about. And not that we're going to talk about money, but I think it's great that you're in this space because, particularly for women, women of color, we often don't talk about money in our households. And so we just talk about going to work every day. So I think this is very, very cool and important that you have launched this. So let's just jump in and talk to me about what was your inspiration? You launched this during the pandemic. I'm always excited and interested on how people do that. We're stuck in the house. And so what inspired you to launch Empower Financial Wellness?
Okay. Well, for me, I think I'm a financial wellness coach. And although I look young, I know I look young, but I do have 30 years of experience in the finance space. And I grew up in a Haitian household, Caribbean household. And my parents taught me three key things. You work hard, you go to school, you go to college, and once that's done, you get a good job. That's what I call the trifecta of success. You do those three things and you've essentially made it. But my parents never taught me about investing. They never taught me about how to save. They never taught me anything. So I had to learn it the hard way through my jobs. I was, financial advisor. I was an equity research analyst, the people that analyze stocks to recommend to institutions. I was the best friend Susie Orman never knew she had. So I had to learn the long way. And I didn't want other women to have to go the long way and not learn about how to attain that sense of financial wellness. And it also stemmed from the fact, as you mentioned, I had friends, I had family members who were building assets with individuals and had a life together, but weren't necessarily paying attention. And then the love of their lives turns into their worst nemesis, and they come out of a union 20 years down the line with nothing to show for it because they just weren't paying attention. So I wanted to establish my business to help women understand that you can attain that sense of financial wellness. And when I say financial wellness, that means, hey, if there's an emergency, you got something unexpected that happened, you have funds that can cover that. You have funds to do the things that you enjoy in life. Because in order to have a fulfilled life, you want to do more than just pay bills. You want to do the things that bring you joy. So that's part of financial wellness. And if your money house is not in order, I don't care what you tell me, the rest of your house is not going to be in order. So I established my company specifically geared towards helping women, moving the needle when it comes to wealth, because we unfortunately have a slight disadvantage. One, there's a earnings gap, right? In terms of earnings, we tend to earn less than our male counterparts doing the same job. Number two, we outlive men. The average life expectancy of a woman is like 81. For a man, it's in the 70s somewhere. So we have to position ourselves so that we're in a good place when it comes to our finances because we already start off with a deficit. And so I wanted to focus my business on helping women. And I started off initially in financial planning and doing everything, helping with debt management, saving, etc., and investing, then I realized my passion really is investing. And that's where you can really make a difference in somebody's net worth, because you give them a skill that they can take, especially us as women, we're good teachers, that they can take and give to the next generation. So to me, that's really what sparked me. I always had a passion for investing. I always had that passion to talk to others about how to invest. And I decided, in the pandemic, I'm, 50 plus, okay, and it's time to live out my purpose.
Amen. Amen. And I'm sure your clients are most appreciative. And so, since you've launched this business, what are like some misconceptions that people have about investing, financial coaches, financial planning that keep them on the sideline?
Well, in terms of financial coaching and financial planning, one of the misconceptions is that you've got to be that person that's just like pinching and sacrificing and giving up the Starbucks, giving up the shopping, and in order to make a difference when it comes to your finances.
Mhm.
That's definitely a misconception, because as a financial coach, I don't subscribe to that. Because if you're pinching, you're sacrificing, you're not enjoying the process, then you're not going to keep up with it. You're not going to be consistent. So that's a misconception that I try to tell people, like, hey, if you're doing a budget, you need to budget and put fun in there. I tell my clients when I do budgets with them that they need to have some fun baked in. They need to plan for that. If you plan for it, if you want to plan to go to Starbucks 7 days a week and get your favorite latte, you can do that as long as you plan for it. So that's part of the misconception. But when you're talking about investing in the stock market, there are at least 3 big myths and misconceptions, right? One, people think it takes a boatload of money. You got to have like thousands of dollars to invest.
That's true.
And I tell people, look, you got $5 a day. You go to Starbucks, it's going to cost you more than $5 for that latte, especially bearing on the sides, even the small ones nowadays. So you can take one day, $5 and invest and set yourself up for the future. Because if you're constantly investing $5 a day at a lower average return, at the end of 40 years, you would have close to $1 million at $5 a day. So I tell people, you got $5 a day, you can afford to take one day off from Starbucks and invest in yourself and do something that your future you is going to thank you for. So you can open a brokerage account, which is an account that you need in order to start investing. You can open an account with $0. You open it. So in order to invest, you need a brokerage account. You can't invest out of your checking account.
And I bet you most people don't know that you can open with no money.
Yes, they don't know that. So that's a thing you can open. Then lastly, there is such a thing as fractional shares. So when you open a brokerage account, you need to make sure that they offer fractional shares. And what do I mean by that? Just what the name implies. If I have a share of Amazon stock, let's say, and the share of Amazon stock is trading at $250, and I only got $50, then I can buy $50 worth of Amazon stock. So there is no reason you got $5, $10, $20 that you can't be investing in the stock market. So that's myth and misconception number 1. Misconception number 2 is that people think I got to know everything that's going on. I got to be that person that I used to be, poring over the financial statements and analyzing balance sheets and crunching numbers in order to invest and in order to know what to invest in. That's not true. I always tell my clients, you drive a car, right? Do you know what's going on inside the hood of that car?
Most often not.
Yeah. So most often not, but you drive the car takes you from point A to point B.
And you trust it?
Yep. You take care of your business. So it's the same concept. You need to know the few key things that will position you in order to start investing. And then last, people think, well, stock market's kind of like gambling. You don't know what's going on. I could lose all my hard-earned money. I work too hard for my money. I don't even want to dabble with that. That's a misconception. Now, if you go out there and you get a hot tip from your Uncle Joey and tells you go invest in this company without you even doing anything, then maybe that could potentially happen, that you're investing in that hot thing. You don't know why you're investing in it, and you go invest and you might get better. Whereas if you have the right strategy, I often say that investing in the stock market is kind of like food preferences. You might like spicy food. You might be vegan. I might, like a nice big fat steak. We have different preferences. So what I invest in may not be what you invest in. So everybody has a different investor persona, right? And you have to understand what that persona is before you dive in. Because if you're that person who takes to the bed, if the stock market goes down 10% in a day, although you haven't really lost anything because you haven't sold anything, then there are certain things that you might not want to invest in, but you have to know that before you dive in. And so it's not a complicated process if you have the right support and the right guidance. The important thing is you have to be in the game, because investing allows you to double your money at a much faster clip.
Well, look, I hope our listeners got that investment 101 right here. Like, we didn't come on and talk about investing, but Myrna just gave you investment 101. And if you missed it, shame on you. So you're working with women. What's been some aha moments that you know you're doing the right thing?
Aha moments come with my clients, right? When I see, an example of a woman, right, who's 60 years old and never invested a day in her life, then she ends up investing, ends up teaching her grandkids, and is making money in the stock market. That to me tells me, okay, I'm doing the right thing. When I see, a woman that's positioning herself for retirement in her 40s, that's starting to think about it, because what happens is that some of our clients, they end up being at that point where, okay, now I'm at a point where I'm making some money. I have a little bit of extra cash, but I don't know what to do with it. And so the aha moment comes when you see that they're taking that extra money and doing something with it that's going to help them benefit their future youth, benefit even the next generation. So it's really seeing that once they start to learn about it, because I have people, they're like, oh, I'm not a numbers person, and that end up being so excited about investing, and that they're researching and they're doing things. It's the whole concept of empowering a woman. That's why the name of my company is Empower Financial Wellness, because you teach somebody to fish is better than giving them fish, right? And so that's my aha moment, that knows that I'm doing the right thing. I'm on my path, because when I see women and I see their portfolios growing and I see their wealth increasing and I see them working towards reducing that wealth gap, then that's a beautiful thing.
I love it. I love it. And I know that through your passion, that you are really helping move the needle, and you're really helping women, particularly, go from working every day to having wealth at the end of the day. And so that's really what we want to, and really, I think that, talking about money in our communities of color is not often done. And I think it's so important that we talk about money like we talk about going to the doctor or going to work. Like, it should be a very common conversation that we have in our households. And how to spend money, how not to spend money, how to create a good financial behavior. And I think that's and when we talked before, I spoke about like, our behavior with money is oftentimes the thing that holds us back from, you know, going deep or going into places where where majority audiences, as I will call them, majority audiences take those risks and invest, and they look and they come out on top, right? And we're still going to Starbucks and buying all the things that we want. And we can do both, as you say, we can do both.
Yes.
Exactly. So I want to shift a little bit to talk about your starts from a business entrepreneurship perspective. Yes. Because, really, Wisdom and Hustle is really about helping people who might want to start or people who are interested in growing their business and really leaning into this expertise that you have brought. You started your business in 2020 during the pandemic. What was that like?
Well, that was more of taking a leap of faith, right? That, people would be interested in doing anything, right, during the pandemic. But what I found is that people were interested. People had extra time, being at home. They were spending more time doing research and were being a little bit more introspective. So starting during the pandemic, I think actually helped my business because I think I was well positioned at a time where people weren't necessarily doing the long commutes and they had time to focus on, accomplishing this particular financial goal.
And so what were some of the challenges with that? I mean, like we were all kind of, everybody was on Zoom. I mean, like we knew about Zoom, but all of a sudden Zoom became our friend, right? And so what were some of the challenges that you encountered perhaps in launching this? And really, you're stepping into the unknown. You're like, we're in a pandemic, people are home. Like, I want to start a business. Like, what were some of those things?
I think some of the initial stumbling blocks, if you will, that you get into regardless of the pandemic dynamics, right? I think one of the first hurdles for me was really understanding who is my customer. Because initially my net was wide. I was like, I will help anybody and everybody. Everybody's got to come to the stock market nirvana. We are going to move forward. I want everybody to get their budgets right. I was helping everybody. I had
the universe.
I was helping everybody. But it took some time to kind of go through some iterations to understand that no, who is your ideal client? My ideal client is not the person who's living paycheck to paycheck that is, struggling, that's, $50,000 in credit card debt. That is, I can help that person, but that person is not my customer. So I had to go through a few iterations and going through a few customers to realize, where do I want to land? So that was, number one. And number two is really figuring out, what do I want to offer? Because I have a breadth of finance expertise. I can go wide. I can do financial planning. I've been a financial advisor. So I started off pretty wide, where I was helping women with pretty much all aspects and doing more of a holistic view on your money so that they could understand, okay, if you don't get your budget right, you don't get your savings right, you don't pay off your debt, it's hard for you to go investing and it's hard for you to build that net worth. So it was pretty much doing some wealth management practices and giving them the tools, like showing them. I have a whole module in my program that's showing them the money, where it says, show me the money, where a lot of times when we go and we do different things, we don't realize that there's ways that we can free up money without us having to work an extra hour, get an extra client, or do any of that nature. Is just really repositioning what you're doing. So I started off in that path, but then I realized, hey, what is it that brings me joy? I don't like, I can help somebody with their budget, but do I enjoy? Does that bring me joy? Not really. It helps me when they save money and they can free up some money in their budget. That's great. But investing brought me joy. So I had to go from wide net, not knowing who my customer was, to narrower focus.
Okay.
and figuring out that I just wanted to focus on investing, and that brought me joy, and then building my business and offers based off that.
I love that. And I mean, I think the takeaway here a little bit is that you got to really narrow. And I like the fact that you leaned into what you enjoy, not necessarily what is needed in the marketplace, because it sounded like initially when you were finding that a lot of people need budget management, but you was like, yeah, they need that, but that's not really what I want to offer.
Exactly.
Power Financial really wants to lean into helping people who are in a position to invest what they have and really build wealth. That's really what I'm hearing here, that you're really helping people build wealth, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're doing it for women. I mean, I love that. And so, aside, so you narrowed down your target audience. What were some other early mistakes, perhaps, that you had to learn from?
Well, I got to say pricing my services way too low. So this is something like, if you're going to do a side hustle or have a business, because I work a full-time job. I am chief financial officer for a network of 90 charter schools. So I'm a busy lady, and this is my business. I don't like to call it a side gig. It is my business. So one of the early mistakes that I made was pricing. Right? I was priced way too low for my time, my expertise, and the results that I brought for my actual clients. And so that kind of brought about a little bit of frustration, because I said, well, here I am doing all this work. So the joy that I had from seeing my clients get the results was a little bit dampened by the fact that here I am doing all this work and I'm not really getting paid for it. So this seems to be a hobby. This is not a business. This is a hobby. So then I had to kind of figure out what's the right price point and put my business hat on and my finance hat on and say, how much does it cost me to actually get to this particular product or service, right? Mm-hmm. How much does it cost me? And am I at least, generating the cost of this? Mm-hmm. Or am I just having a hobby where I'm, not making money? So that really was a mistake that I made, is starting too low and not really understanding my worth in the marketplace. Because what I bring to the table is 30 plus years of experience, and having done it and having the ability to communicate it in such a way that it makes sense to the person that doesn't know anything about investing terminology, and get them to the point where they become active investors. Because that's the difference with my program, is that the program doesn't stop. You've got to be doing. You are set up. We work with you so that you're actually investing, and investing on a regular basis. Because investing one time is great, right? But the keys to success when it comes to investing consists of time, because you want to invest over a period of time. You want to be consistent, investing month after month after month. And 3, you want a good rate of return. Mm-hmm. If you make 12%, 20% on your money, that's much better than a sleepy savings account that's generating less than 1%. And if you've got a high yield savings account, maybe you'll get 3-4%.
Right. I love that. Sleepy savings account. That's what most of us have. We have a sleepy savings account. And so in terms of marketing, so now you know that you want to focus on women who perhaps generate a certain level of income. How did you go about building your client base?
Well, a lot of it was on Facebook, right? Being consistent on Facebook and on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, I kind of just recently in the last few months amped up my presence there, because initially I just considered it as a space for my day job, not necessarily as a space where both worlds can commingle. But then I said, hey, I am me. I do both things. People know I do both things. So if they're confused, they can ask me. So I just went out there and started promoting my business on LinkedIn. Most of my clients are those powerhouse, high achieving women. They are on LinkedIn.
Yes, they are.
And on Facebook, it's really about being consistent, about going out and doing lives, doing fireside chats, doing podcasts, getting myself out there where people are consistently seeing me. Like, Myrna, I'm seeing you everywhere. You're everywhere. And building up my friend base, because I initially started off as a very private person, like I don't want people in my business, to now having over 5,000 friends and followers. So you have to kind of get over that and put yourself
Got to get out there. You got to get in the forefront.
Exactly. Especially having started my business during the pandemic, everything was online. Nobody was going to in-person events. I do some in-person speaking engagements, but really my business is an online business. So it's really through, workshops and connecting with people too. Connecting with people. It's like doing things like coffee chats, getting to know somebody. Because somebody you might get to know now might end up being somebody that sends you a client or, who becomes a client. And that's happened to me a lot, sending out and nurturing my email list. So I have a Facebook group. I collect emails and offering value, with weekly newsletters, letting them know different tips about, managing their money. So all of that kind of helps to build over time.
I love it. I love it because I think that those are like I've talked to people that are like, I'm not sure I really want to be on LinkedIn. I was like, look, you've got to be out there. And you've got to, even if somebody sends you a friend, I don't think it's called a friend request or a connection.
Yeah.
Somebody that you don't know them, but they know somebody that you know somebody. Like they're not you're not a mass murderer. Accept it. because you are now a part of their network. Because somebody that you don't know in their network is going to connect with you. And if you're in business, like visibility is it. And so that's smart that you are now, building your presence in the LinkedIn space.
Yes.
So, how, we're talking about people's money here. So how do you build trust and credibility? And is that a part of your visibility, your marketing visibility plan, talking about, because you just gave us the 3 tips. Like if that's not building credibility, I don't know what is. But but how are you building trust and credibility? Because you're talking about people's money here.
Yes. I think for me, it's a longer path to client acquisition than, let's say, somebody that say, okay, I'm going to build a website for you, something that's, concrete and tangible that doesn't have to do directly with people's money. So in order to build that trust, one, it helps when you have, client testimonials, you have your receipts, right? You have clients that come out and say, hey, Myrna's the best thing since sliced bread. I like working with her. My portfolio's growing, gangbusters. So that helps to build, credibility, because I've done it over and over again and help, women who've come from, I don't know anything about investing to becoming obsessed about investing. So I've created some obsessed, people who are happy and excited to invest in the stock market. So that helps build, a certain amount of credibility when you put yourself out there. And then you have people who are speaking and saying, hey, testimonials to say, this is what, Myrna has done. But, another part is also letting people see a little bit more about you. I think that helps build trust, because a big part of visibility is not just me coming on here as an expert and saying, hey, I know this stuff. I got 30 years of experience. I know my stuff, right? It's about who you are as a person, because a lot of times, particularly as women, I don't know about you, but sometimes I do business with someone. A lot of times I do business with someone because I like them.
Exactly.
And I do business with someone because I don't vibe with them.
Yeah.
And so the vibe is important. So, communicating things out there that says, I'm a mom, I got, a husband, I got, I'm taking care of my elderly mom, communicating certain things that make you more of a person than just that expert. Right. And coming on and saying things. And I do things like fireside chat, for example, with different experts who may have who provide a different service, but service the same general ideal client. And so we come together and we talk about different topics. For example, I did one earlier this week, which is all about prioritizing you. As women, we don't tend to prioritize ourselves, and the link to self-love and building your wealth. And so we had a whole talk about that, inside my Facebook group, and it was on LinkedIn. And so you kind of build trust because people see that, okay, you're talking about money, but there's other aspect to it as well. They can relate to you. Like, okay, you're a woman, you got, a job, you understand the demands of, caring for an elderly aging parent. You understand the demands of being a mother. You understand the demands of, being in a position where you might be at a job where there aren't that many of you at your level. Mm-hmm. So there are a number of things that make you relatable that help you build that level of trust. And people that know, like, and trust factor, people get to know you, they get to like you. I mean, I've met people on the internet that I've just known on the internet for years, never met them in person, but, I feel like I got to know them because I've been on Facebook posting, and I feel like I like them because I've been to a couple of their workshops, and there's a certain level of relationship building. So the relationship building part is important in order to build that trust, but putting yourself out there so that people get to know you and see if they vibe with you. They may not vibe with you, and that's okay. And if they vibe with you, then great.
That's great. And so for, let's say somebody's interested in, moving into the financial space, as a business. And so what advice would you give them? How do you define success in this financial coaching space business?
I think success is obviously working with and getting the results for your clients, right? So no matter what type of financial coach you are, and there are different types. I mean, there are people who cater to a specific type of clientele. There are people who just focus on the budgeting aspect of things. There are people who do, investing, like myself. Once you pick your niche, success really is about delivering results. This is finance. This is people's money, right? People don't want to pay you money just so they can do something and not be successful at it. So if somebody's going to pay you to help them with their money management, you have to be able to have a service or something that helps them make a change that leaves them different from when they started from the before starting to work with you, and have some tangible results. So that's when you have a product or you have a service that delivers those tangible results, then that to me is success. No matter how large your client base may be, but knowing that you're delivering results for that person and that person is getting a return on their investment of working with you, then that to me is success.
That's great. And so what is this? We're in 2025 now. So you've been in business, 4 years now? Is my mathing?
Yeah, your math is good. I established my business though at the end of 2020. So
Okay.
yes.
And so what are you most proud of since you've launched?
Well, one, I'm most proud of the fact that I started a business because let me tell you, I have an MBA from an Ivy League university, and nobody tells you that business in theory does not translate to the business in practice.
Say it again. Say it again.
So it's a hard knock life, being a business owner. There's a lot that goes on. So nobody really told me about that. So to me, I'm proud of the fact that one, I started the business and decided to follow my purpose and passion. But two, that I'm still alive and thriving,
in the midst of it, right? Yes, that is true. I was gonna say you took the words out of my mouth. I was gonna say it's harder than your day job because it's all those things that I mean, your day job is you know what you're doing. Like
Right.
you you know, I mean, you've been trained for your craft. And so here it is, you're going to start a business and you don't really know what you don't know. I mean, it's you having this idea, and the idea is that you're going to serve people, people are going to come, people are going to trust you. It's all those things. And then you don't know about marketing and getting a coach or all the social media stuff now. Like 30 years ago there was no such thing as social media. Like people put flyers on the door. I remember my father would do door hangers. He was an insurance agent. I mean, now that's all gone, right? um and so you've given us some nuggets. What advice do you have for people who want to start a business? Yes, yes, I like that. And you are really impacting a lot of women who really need it, like, who we really need it. So as we come to a close, what's next for Empower Financial Wellness? And don't forget to tell us about your monthly happy hours. I love it. So, Myrna, before we close, I ask everybody, what are your word or words of wisdom for founders who want to stay in the hustle? One, Well, you heard it here. Don't give up. If you're listening, don't give up. It's going to be worth it. Well, thank you, Myrna, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening and joining this Wisdom and Hustle podcast. I hope you found these conversations with founders inspiring, motivating, and encouraging to start your own hustle. See you next time.